one thing to be really successful in any discipline, so whether it is estate planning, tax planning, or behavioral finance, it's saying, if I want to be successful here, I need to take all of my best ideas and create a roadmap for my client relationships. So how do I onboard clients and how do I do it consistently every time and implement the right tech at the right time? So how do I take all these tools and map them out?
Welcome to Knowing Me, Knowing You, the podcast for the future of wealth management. Thanks for being here. I'm Marla Sofer. Money is a tool. It empowers people. Let's dive into how technology is personalizing advice, strengthening connections, and creating lasting impact. If you're an advisor looking to differentiate, a fintech leader shaping the next wave, or a client ready to take control of your financial future, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello, and today we are joined by Emily Rassam, a nationally recognized financial planner who is changing the way advisors think about long-term planning. She's a partner and senior planner at Archer Investment Management, a fully virtual, independent RIA managing over $300 million in assets. With over 18 years of experience, she and her team serve over 200 households with deep holistic financial planning. Her business serves tech professionals who generally have equity ownership, and her impact goes way, way beyond her client work. If I can quote my partner, Dr. Megan Lertz, as she was talking about Emily this week, she said, Emily is a force. She's a Forbes top women advisor and member of the Investopedia Top 100. She's a 40 under 40 rising star by Investment News, and she lends her voice and expertise to top advisory platforms like Holistiplan and Jump AI. She's a frequent speaker, writer, advisor to the broader wealth management community. And today we are going to explore her client-first planning philosophy, how she's using behavioral finance and tools like Nomi to deepen relationships, and how she's helping tech professionals and pre-retirees design work-optional lives that align with their values. Emily, thank you so much for being here, and welcome to the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. What an introduction. Thank you.
It is delightful that you're here. We always start the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast with the same question. And we like to start on a positive note and ask you, what is most exciting to you about the moment that we're in right now, about the future of wealth management?
Yeah, I think the thing that's exciting to me right now is that there are new technologies out there that are saving so much time. You know, it used to be that I had a certain amount of hours in the week that I could meet with clients, and then I'd kind of go back to the Excel spreadsheets and like pour over the data and do all these inputs. And I feel like the more that software can help support some of the processes that we can do, the more I can spend face to face and the more impact I can have on my client relationships. And so I'm really starting to feel that shift with tech, really supporting the advisor, kind of using our time in the best way possible. And our highest and best use is sitting in front of clients face to face and having more time to do that.
Fantastic. So the efficiency, what tech is introducing as it relates to efficiency and opening up time between you and your client to actually get into the nuts and bolts of delivering them a higher value of service.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. I don't know that we've ever spoken about this, but I'm very curious to learn from you about your journey. Like, what brought you to being a financial planner at this thriving RIA, recognized by Forbes, Investopedia, and more, frequently on stages, talking about how you are changing financial planning to be more client-centric? What drew you in, and what has kind of been the through line throughout your career that brought you to this point?
Yeah. So the first time I was interested in this industry was in a finance class in college, where we sat in front of a financial calculator and input a time value of money calculation. So save a certain amount of money for a certain number of years, you're going to have a whole lot of money later. And I've said, wow, this is cool. So compounding of money drew me in. And my very first job was actually a really unique entry point into this industry. I was working for a very 401k focused advisory firm that had people going out and doing enrollment and education meetings for participants of 401k plans. And so 21 years old, I'm like, this sounds fun. I get to hop in my car, go drive to these different companies, meet with people, anyone from, somebody my age that's brand new and just enrolling in their 401k up to somebody who's retiring out of an executive position. And it was a fun job. And very quickly learned that the job was not what I expected it to be, because I thought I was going to teach people how to pick investments inside of their 401k, how to see the power of compounding money and saving. And when you start actually having thousands and thousands of conversations with people, you realize that I don't need to teach you how to pick which investment to select in your 401k. I need you to teach you how to think about money differently. And so I got that lesson very quickly, because I had the benefit of just having these thousands of conversations a year. And I'm not even being hyperbolic. I talk to thousands of people a year, and you just learn about their money story and money history and why they make certain decisions when it came to even just saving in their retirement plan or doing everything else. And so I started to get more and more questions about all these different topics. They'd see me and say, oh, do you also know about this? Like, can you answer a question about, my mom's Medicare, or this decision I have to make, or I got this letter in the mail and has a dollar sign on it and I don't know what to do with it. And so I just started kind of going back and researching and understanding more about this industry. And it led me to eventually just working with families directly on everything in their lives with a dollar sign next to it, and not just optimizing the dollars, but also how they relate to their money and how they handle their money, how they think about it, and how they improve their lives with money and improve their relationship with money along the way.
Super interesting. So we are recording this today right after I recorded a webinar where an advisor actually asked the question, which was, okay, so if AI is helping me optimize my time, going back to your first answer, and I have all this time open up, what am I going to do? And so I love that you are offering an answer already in your prior answer. And you're basically saying you're always making financial choices. There are so many things that are hitting you day in and day out. And to show up as a high value, effective financial planner, I want to actually help you with all of those. Does that resonate?
Yeah, absolutely. So it just allows you to have this deeper relationship, and the technology is just allowing us to spend that time in conversation, because there's no statement I can look at that will help me understand my client better than a good conversation will help me understand my client. And so that's kind of that face time, and being able to increase that and increase just what we can help them see and integrate and kind of pull into their picture. I feel like technology is helping us kind of get to a point where our value really isn't running the math, but our value is that conversation.
That makes a lot of sense. I love also that you started doing what we call in software just outrageous user research. You spoke to thousands of people about money, and you learned this is the problem. This is exactly what they need help with. Now you're serving tech professionals and pre-retirees, often ones that have concentrated positions in maybe their employer stock, or maybe they were founders or in the early team. You're helping them navigate a lot of complexity in their financial choices. How are you looking at incorporating behavioral insights, discovery? You have been, since I've known you, the way I talk about you behind your back, Emily, is I tell people that there are some firms out there like Archer and Emily at Archer who are the best of the best when it comes to behavioral finance. They have done their research. They're familiar with every single technology out there that is there to help them. And they are the least threatened by the technology because they recognize that it helps them get better. That is, like, to me, it's so eye-opening and refreshing when I met you, because a lot of what I'm up against and a lot of other software out there is like, but wait a second, if you're good at this, what does that leave me? And I would love to hear a little bit first about your relationship with your clients and how you're helping them, how you're building in behavioral insights, and what you found just kind of on this journey, which I'll say it, that you as kind of the best of the best in this space, trying to use tech as a way to enrich the level of value you're delivering.
And I think part of that comes from, there's studies that are out there about how many clients you can hold in your head and really know. And you get to this point in your career where you're like, man, I'm losing some of the thread on some of the details here, or I'm not able to connect all these dots and priorities with every single person and know that fully about every single person that I'm engaging with. I need help documenting that. And so part of the documentation, so part of the technology that comes in is to say, give me these little clues that remind me of all these different moving parts, because I don't want to just trust my brain to do that, to bring that together in conversation. I can do a good job if I'm meant to memorize it, but I'm going to do such a better job if I've got all of their priorities and goals kind of mapped out and the ability to see that full picture. And also, when I think about time, I also think about how do I bring people in to support me in serving a client? And if I'm the only person that gets that client, or I'm the only person that really understands their priorities with if they want to retire early, or if they want to drive nice vehicles or own a vacation home, or how all of those fit in for each unique person, I'm the only person that knows that, that's not good for any business to have that live in somebody's head. And so kind of using that technology to continue to support that. So when I think about kind of my kind of journey through behavioral finance, I think about, well, I started working with clients. I just was very curious and interested. I love my clients. I mean that truly. And getting to know them and understand them has helped me to just help them make decisions. But I didn't have framework for that. I think it was years later that I started to read books that would tell me about, what these specific beliefs or biases are called, or where this fits in if you're going to instruct somebody about how to label these personality types, these money personality types, or behaviors or characteristics. I just knew people, just had all this experience talking to people and just said, okay, I get this person, but I don't get why I get this person. And so I think that I had just kind of stored a lot of the information about my clients at different points in my head. And I realized as I continued to grow that I needed to, one, be able to tag in team members to help support my processes. But also I didn't want to have to be responsible for all of that data in one place. I'm going to be better if I have that better documented and I can use that data a little bit better. So in this kind of journey, as I've grown my client base, as I've grown the tools that I've had available, it's just saying how and where should all of this data live so that I can have the best, most effective communication and conversation with my clients, and I can help kind of move them forward and nudge them forward. So I think that part of that journey is taking what's in my head, getting it documented better, and then continue to refine that. So that's the journey I feel like I continue to be on, is how do I make that process better? How do I scale that process? So how do I make that repeatable? How do I take what's working really well with my best client relationships that I have the best relationship with? How do I make every relationship that way? And what are the characteristics of that? So I'd say that my journey really has been, as I learned all the technical knowledge that I needed on, tax planning and equity compensation and estate planning and investments. It's really, this has felt like kind of the most interesting thing to solve and continue to solve as I've moved through my journey in this space.
I love that. So what I heard repeatedly here that you kept pulling out is really what the promise of tech is supposed to be. It is enabling scalability and consistency. So providing a high level of service, acting as a way to enrich and supplement and power scalability without sacrificing value and without sacrificing that extremely high touch, very well-informed breed and brand of advice that you're delivering, of planning. So you speak on a lot of stages in the wealth space, and you talk about tax and estate planning and behavioral finance. What kind of questions do you get? And how do you guide other planners and advisors who are looking to embed more of the technical tools, but on the softer side of money, about the emotional side, what clients are maybe not able to articulate clearly, and how tech actually helps them do that?
Yeah. And so I think that when advisors come to me, I get those types of questions of how do I gain these technical skills, or how do I gain the knowledge that I need to kind of move forward? So sometimes it comes in the form of, what professional designation should I take? What books should I read? What should I study? And I think people have this expectation that what they need to learn is like technical tax planning knowledge. That's important. But I think that it's more important to focus on the behavioral finance aspect. So I think that often I'm going to guide people into watching webinars or listening to podcasts that are in more of the behavioral finance space. Really, where you and I got connected is I'm the biggest fangirl of Dr. Megan Lertz. And so it's just go find anything she's ever done, like read everything she's written, go watch every podcast she's ever been on. That's finding those people that you resonate with, that can kind of deliver meaningful ideas and advice to you, and that you can maybe implement into your processes. I think gravitating towards that. So the questions I get are, usually kind of coming from the place of, how do I educate myself differently? But my responses typically are, in the area of behavioral finance, picking up those right books and listening to those podcasts and finding the people that you love to listen to when it comes to that space, maybe emulate. And then the second thing is, having set processes is incredibly important. So one thing to be really successful in any discipline. So whether it is estate planning, tax planning, or behavioral finance, it's saying, if I want to be successful here, I need to take all of my best ideas and create a roadmap for my client relationships. So how do I onboard clients and how do I do it consistently every time and implement the right tech at the right time? So how do I take all these tools and map them out? And part of that is, I remember at one point thinking, man, I've got too many great questions I want to ask my clients. It was just, I collected all these questions from all these different places, from different podcasts and books and ideas and just from practice. Said, where do I implement? Where do I plug in these different conversation points and questions? And part of that is just developing that set of processes that works for every single client every single time. So you don't have to try to remember or pull those out later. So I think that that's a really important thing that technology can do for us, is to create in our client relationship management or CRM systems. It's creating those workflows that kind of have those trigger points of, okay, we're at this point in the relationship, it's time to send this NOMI assessment, or we're at this point in the relationship, it's time to uncover a little bit more about maybe some of their money history or, their family relationship with money, or things that we might want to know. And what point do I want to know that about? So rather than just having this open-ended free-form relationship, it's having kind of a more carefully constructed thought process around kind of having those important conversations that need to happen at the right time in the right place, and then documenting and storing that information so it's useful for you to utilize moving forward.
What if financial planning wasn't just about numbers, but about you, your values, your goals, your vision for the future? NOMI is transforming client discovery for wealth managers, going beyond assets and risk scores to uncover what truly matters. With behavioral insights and real-time data, NOMI helps advisors personalize advice, build deeper connections, and grow their businesses. Because the best financial decisions start with knowing you. Discover the future of client engagement at nomi.com. That makes so much sense. And I love that it's not only about the tool, it's about how it fits into your process, how it fits into the way that you want to engage your client and in the right sequence so that it does feel more consistent. It feels more scalable. It guides you to provide that same high level for everyone. I have heard from other advisors who are like, oh, I've got a question bank, to your point, of 250 questions. But nobody wants to sit in a meeting and answer 250 questions or go through a questionnaire of 250 questions. It's really critical to find out which are the ones that and how are they asked in a way that gives you that type of information that will allow you to then act on it or motivate them to act on it or figure out what happens on the other end of this question that is aligned with what you're delivering, which goes back to you're helping people with designing work optional lives. I love that term. I've heard some of my friends use the term vocationally independent. It's such a powerful concept. It is a fantastic alternative to retirement, the term retirement, which to me always just sounded like a financial product. You know, I'm hitting you in the head with a sale, as opposed to this is about you. This is your future in which work becomes optional. How do you guide clients in that conversation to think about money that balances kind of where they are today versus where they want to be and helps them understand at what point did I hit that optionality?
Yeah, that's a great question. And part of it is, it's not just as simple as asking somebody, well, when do you want to stop working? And for a lot of people, that looks different than it may have just decades ago, where people worked in one job and stopped. It looks a lot different with the ability for people to work part-time or consult or start a business or, do things that look a little bit different. It's helping people to maybe imagine all of those possibilities of what that could look for. So kind of giving some of that space to, what do you ultimately picture and what are some of the options that we want to run out? So in a lot of my plans for my clients, I don't just have this one plan. I have options kind of built in. And so I just came off of a client meeting where, we had talked about maybe stopping their current jobs at a certain point and then scaling back down into a lower stress, lower pressure job in their mid 50s. But then we've got different tiles that we kind of play with about, well, what could that look like? So if we wanted to just stop at 57 or, stop a little bit earlier and then work part-time or consult or do something maybe a fun career that might be completely unrelated to what they're doing, imagining all of that, but then also imagining and understanding all of the trade-offs that come with. So how are we going to make our next vehicle decisions? Are we going to own a second property at some point or do home improvement? So this client was looking at adding a deck or a sun porch to the back of their house, and they need to make vehicle decisions and they have college education decisions for their kids. So it's having that understanding of the importance of each of those goals and the optionality of each of those goals, and then being able to just map those different variables out. And if I don't know how they feel about vehicles, I have clients that they just have to have a new car and they don't want to drive something that's older or has higher miles or is a different brand, and I have clients that say, I don't really care what I drive. It gets me from point A to point B. And understanding, where are you on that spectrum? Where are you on the education spectrum? Do you want, are your kids all going to private school and expensive colleges? And do you want to pay for all of that? Is there some support? Where does that fit in? And how does that all fit into the importance of your retirement goal? Because all of these are levers. And so how we spend and save are influenced by how we feel about all of these goals and how we fit all those pieces in together. And so you really can't solve for any one question. I've got an email in my inbox about buying or leasing a vehicle. I can't just answer that question from a math perspective. I have to know how that fits into your goal of wanting to add a pool in your backyard or retiring early or all those pieces. And so that's what's important about really having a lot of conversation to pull out not just the questions you've asked them initially, but getting some of that tangential conversation that comes with those kind of offhanded comments that then also become important parts of the plan as well.
Yes, your answer actually highlights what I talk about often is that as an industry, we have a lot of work to do to evolve from product centricity to solution centricity. And your answer really highlights you've done it. You have shifted to solution centricity by, in the process of delivering a plan or advice, you are learning more about the problems. You're helping with prioritization. You're guiding through trade-offs and decision-making, which is very different than how many in the industry were trained to sell a product. Like, I'm going to sell you this product, and the product is an allocation or a plan or a policy or an estate plan or whatever it may be. And that has held us back because it blinds us to the personalization. If you're so busy pushing, you can't pull. And your entire business is around the pull. One of the questions I have for you is that Archer is fully remote, right? And you have everything you do is virtual. And in our industry, we are very meeting centric. The meeting is kind of the crux. And one of the things that I would love for you to share with our listeners is how are you keeping relationships strong, personal, virtually, while you are embedding all kinds of technologies that happen before and after and during the meeting? The meeting is not only the crux, it is one critical important part, but it's certainly not the only part. Can you talk a little bit more about how you've maintained this trust and strong relationship, even with that shift to kind of a much more tech-heavy engagement process?
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting is I actually think it's maybe just a lot easier for me to introduce all this technology because I'm virtual, because people are used to and comfortable with the screen share. I remember, I did most of my career was really in person, and it was you print out reports and bring it into the meeting, or you get into a conference room with a big TV, the client's at the end of the table and they're kind of squinting at the numbers a little bit, and you're kind of moving through some of those screens on a big TV, and it still made it kind of weird for conversation. I love virtual meetings. I didn't realize how great they were going to be, where you can pull up the screen and walk people through the tech.
And they can see it.
They can see it, and they can see it in their screen in the comfort of their home. And, I think if you told me this 6 years ago that I would be, fully virtual and loving it, and I would just laugh you out of the room. I just thought that this is going to be, I've got to sit across the table from all of my clients, and that the conversation has to be conversation across the table. And I actually think that I have better communication and conversation with my clients over a screen because they're happy and comfortable. I can meet with clients more frequently because I don't have this additional time that's needed for these in-person meetings because there's more buffering needed. And so I think that I'm able to use tech a lot better. And the tech, of course, has just improved a lot in the last 5 years that I've been fully virtual. But I think that in these conversations, there's plenty of time in a meeting to have some of that connection point. So having that checking in and talking and setting the agenda and talking about goals, and then bringing up the tech to support it. And so moving through and showing them what I'm seeing. So let me take you into my head. So when I'm telling you, you're going to be be okay. And I'm telling you that you can afford this. And I'm telling you that, that this is how I'm seeing your plan. I can show you that as well. So I think that that is really important to kind of back that up. So I can't just from a tax planning perspective, if I say to a client, yep, your projected tax liability for this year is $192,000. Well, if I can pull up and kind of show the evidence of that and the data that went into, and I can kind of talk through it as we're chatting, there's a lot of value in that too. So it's a blend and a combination of bringing in the tech tools at the right time in a meeting and having the conversation that flows with that as well. So that's been something that I think over the last 5 years as the tech has gotten better and I've just operated only in this space fully virtually, I so strongly prefer this to how I operated previously. I just don't know how anybody can do this across a table anymore. It feels like this is the way to do it.
Yeah, it sounds like it has created a much more opportunity for interaction and engagement, bringing them in a way that was really hard before. So would love to pivot a little bit to Nomi. You were a very early adopter of Nomi. I'm curious about what drew you in, what was the problem it was looking to solve, and what kind of value both you and your clients have gotten going back to the very first thing you were saying, like the excitement around tech and where we are today is around scalability, consistency, the ability to leverage kind of a broader team and really raise the bar on advice.
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, it's starts with having good conversation, kind of learning how to directionally talk to people and then where to store that information. But I wanted to start to ask a lot more questions of my clients ahead of meetings. And so the process I had developed was to send an agenda ahead of time that said, here are some questions I'm going to ask during the meeting. And so I'd have some conversation points that were planned, but also I was sending ahead just a jot form for them to complete and answer their questions. And it was a big dance to try to figure out what questions were going to make the jot form. I actually hired somebody from the outside to come in and say, help me with this, because I have so much I want to know about everybody, but I don't want to overwhelm them with questions. And so it was just paring that list down to, this is what I want to ask people. So I said, okay, I've got it figured out. I'm going to send out these jot forms. People are going to fill them out. I'm going to have all the answers I need. And then I'm going to take them into conversation, build their answers into their financial plan. Everything's going to be great. A couple problems with that. One, jot form doesn't allow for people to go back in and see their answers or retake it or stop and come back. I mean, we're asking some questions that sometimes take some pondering. Not everybody opens it up and knows exactly how to answer every single question. And so the problem that I was getting back from clients was that, okay, I think I partially answered this. Did I submit it? I can't see my answers. Maybe I want to change it. I want to come back to this. I want to think about this a little bit more. And so one big thing we wanted to solve for is something that a client can then continue to log into and see. Also for them to see the output. So if they're putting this time into answering these questions for me, what are you going to do with that? So what is this output that I might be able to see or that my advisor sees related to my answers? And, how do I build on that? So, there were a lot of questions that got filtered out from my process with Jotform. And how do I then say, I'm going to kind of ask some questions now and I want to build on it. So I want to be able to revisit, have them see their responses, and I want to be able to add more assessments for them. So be able to kind of build on that behavioral finance experience. And that's something that we were really looking for is what tool can allow us to have this interactive experience that also gives us some insights too. So how do we then take all of that data? We were doing that where we would just read those responses, then have a conversation with the client. But then how do we have maybe a little bit more thoughtful support in creating some of those conversation starters and creating some of those insights that then we can take into conversation into goals and values. So we landed on Nomi. We actually looked at every tool out there, lots of pros and cons to all of them. But Nomi really, we felt had that element of that login, easy interface. That's the first thing every single client says after they go through it is, that was easy. And I've never thought about that before. And that's really, it was helpful and meaningful for them. So we've had some great feedback from clients going into there, but our insights that we're seeing coming out of that as well have been useful for our conversations we've had with clients.
Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for being an early adopter of Nomi. And thank you for sharing kind of where it's delivering like some actionable conversation starters, insights. It's driving that to better, deeper conversation with the clients, everything kind of with this slow way of opening it up opening up a client to share what's really relevant and important so that it stacks on each other. And it honestly can be never ending. You can continue to ask different types of things about them, their lives, how it's changing, and show up each time in a really engaging way. The way we always end our podcast is, what is one instance in your life or a conversations you've had that has totally changed your personal relationship with money?
You probably sent this to me ahead of time too, and I probably should have thought about this. That's a hard question, Marla. Man, you're hitting people at the hard one. Oh, one conversation that's changed my thought about money. So I had a client who shared with me really deeply her fears around spending. And I feel very fortunate that she let me in this way. I had this relationship with the client, and I kept showing her that she was in good shape and kept showing her that, yep, the math works great. You can do all the things you want to do. You can travel to Italy. You can buy a condo at the beach. You can do all these things. And I never really felt like I understood why she wasn't moving forward with anything. She was just spending, just spending like she didn't have any funds, right? And so being able to just have this whole big candid conversation with her and really go far back, I actually ended up having, I think it was a 3.5-hour conversation with her one time. And I feel really blessed that she shared all of that with me. But I was able to do a really thorough money history with her and really understand the dynamics of, she had an early marriage with issues around money. And then she had a second marriage and it was great, but there were still some issues about spending. And just her relationship with being a working woman through these different decades and wanting to be financially independent and wanting to understand kind of what she needed to do to secure her own future. And I really just got this an incredible insight. And I walked away from that conversation understanding a little bit more about some of the fear that maybe some women, widow, some of my older clients might hold around money. And I got the element of some of the relational dynamics that she had, like her role as a woman, a working woman, her role in wanting to be financially independent. And I think kind of walking away with that helped me understand her, but also helped me serve her better and serve other clients better, because she did end up going to Italy. We got her to do that. And actually just got a text from her last week that she's buying a beach condo. And this is like 8 years in the making of having her feel comfortable to do that. And, I don't want to overstate our role in how we've helped her, but I think that her understanding her relationship with money and her maybe digging back into, maybe relating some of her past to her present, helped her move forward better than any tax planning software, financial planning software could have done. And so I think of the wins in my life are people coming to me finally ready to retire when they were terrified to do so. So moving past fear and enjoying money, those are the wins. Those are the highlights in my career. If I think of those excited conversations I have with people who are finally ready to do something. And I try to just get as much as I can out of that of what changed their mind? What was that thing that was said to them, or a question they asked themselves, or a data point they saw that actually moved them forward from, I feel like I need to keep working because that's what I need to do and I need to have an income, to, okay, I can do this. I can retire, or I can go to Italy. I can buy the beach condo. I can buy my dream car. I can actually move forward. Those are the measurements that I like to take, are what are really the important conversations and data points that they learn to kind of do that. So I think that conversation with her really helped. This was years ago. I had that conversation with her, helped me to dig even further. And I feel like that helped me to then move into gathering more money history, actually asking people about those fears and those stronger feelings and emotions that they have around money. And it helped me to see what the impact of those conversations can hold. So I hold that client very near and dear to my heart because I feel like she changed me as an advisor.
Fantastic. It sounds like the impact of this conversation was you searched and searched and searched and you found causation. You found, what is it that is hindering behavior change or hindering the action that you would expect this person to take according to what's on paper? But it's the what's not on paper, and really going into understanding the backdrop. That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing it. I really appreciate it. And thank you very much for sharing more about your journey. Very clear, Emily, why you are an award-winning advisor and a thought leader, very often sought after to guide a whole lot of different wealth tech platforms and on stages at a whole lot of wealth conferences to talk about better client discovery, to talk about the future of financial planning. Your work is certainly evidence of how technology drives the future of planning and how to embed emotional insight into how you are operationalizing it in your practice. How that can coexist with the goal that we're all here for, to help clients live better, more fulfilling, more meaningful lives. Where can listeners find more about Archer? We do have a lot of high net worth women and other advisors and people in the tech space. How can they learn more about you and what you're doing at Archer?
Yeah. So just visiting our website, archerim.com, or finding me on LinkedIn. So usually pretty consistent about sharing some client stories and ideas and tips. And I love just communicating with other advisor friends on there as well, and learning what everyone else is doing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Emily. Listeners, thank you for being here. And thank you for getting so inspired by Emily, as I always am, with respect to how you help your clients align money and values. Please add comments, rate, and share this podcast episode with other people who may learn from it, who may learn from how Emily has embedded a lot of emerging wealth technologies into her financial planning practice and found growth as a result, found more referrals, more reviews, faster onboarding, more consistency in her practice. So Emily, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Molly.
Thank you for joining us on the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Your support helps us bring more transformative conversations to you. Until next time, keep discovering, keep growing, and remember, you're in control of your own financial story. Follow us for more conversations on financial confidence, self-discovery, and the future of money.